Our story began with an Illumina exploration team. Vice and her friends was under attack by the Eclipsites. She found herself inside a colossus with a living, breathing Caelestite above. The Caelestite helped her fend off the Eclipsites with his psychic power. At this point in the story, the Caelestite had been wiped out after an Eclipsite attack 17 years ago. This event was known as the Dark Over Crisis. Since the Caelestite can operate the Colossus, they called him the Navigator. The Caelestites as a race had an arsenal of psychic abilities. They can see light trails, they can allow Aurorians to see light trails, and they can use telepathy. The Colossus is named Soroz. It is a sentient biomechanical vehicle exclusive to the Caelestites. Soroz suggests the Navigator stick to Vice for protection. Vice belongs to a race called Aurorians who can use Luminatic in combat even if they cannot see light trails. Together, the Caelestite and Aurorians pair was a force to be reckoned with. But they was vastly outnumbered by the Eclipsites, which was a race of monsters obsessed with killing. They sent a star flare signal for help. This, however, also attracted both tier Eclipsites. The first to come was Kraken, immediately got wrecked for being part of the tutorial. With Vice's assistance, the Navigator successfully started up Soroz. Soroz took off and broke the encirclement. It was intercepted by a dragon Eclipsite named Nozak. Some nameless Illumina mob characters Allahu Akbar Nozak, allowing the party to escape. Soroz crashed from the damage and the lack of maintenance. Vice tried to convince the Navigator to leave Soroz, but he refused to abandon ship. So she decided to stay with him and got hurt defending him. The protagonist used plot armor. An unexpected reinforcement arrived, the Red Diesel Range. The Red Diesel Range was a group of bandits who came to see the Colossus. But as soon as Charon and the Illumina reinforcement challenged them, they backed down and left. Soroz was taken to Undercity 28. Charon and Vice took turns to dump info on the walls and the Illumina Federation over the next few days. The next plot point came when Nozak and an army of Eclipsites attacked the Undercities. The enemies overwhelmed the city's defense. Charon made his last stand against the wall so that the citizens could evacuate. Then he pressed the red key to blow up the cities along with all the Eclipsites. Nozak survived the blast and got finished off by Vice. Mainly tears were shed for Charon before the guy just rolled out of the mushroom cloud on his magic train. The Navigator sensed the presence of another Caelestite. As they got closer, the Navigator made contact with Mendelson, the master of the Mantis, via telepathy. This is where we were formally introduced to Schumer, the master of the Abydos, and an Eclipsite boss. Schumer wanted something called the think tank module from Mendelson. Mendelson refused. He sent Felix and Vani to show Schumer the door. Schumer somehow turned the crew against Mendelson. Help came, and Vice defeated the true bosses. Schumer wanted the think tank modules, the autonomous crow unit, and the flame control modules to turn her Colossus, the Abydos, into a space battleship. The think tank module can reveal the location of the other two. Schumer found the modules at the core of the Mantis, but she needed time to crack the password. In the meanwhile, a high-level Eclipsite named Tabaad hunts down Mendelson. The Navigator used plot armor and Hiiro showed up to one-shot Tabaad. Schumer and Mendelson used to be Caelestites. In order to survive the Dark Over Crisis, they took in the ship and became Eclipsites. The ship makes Schumer stronger and crueler. Meanwhile, it was killing Mendelson because he refused to grow a pair and just be evil. Before Mendelson died, he told the navigators about a second think tank module in Lumopolis. His death caused his think tank modules to blow up in Schumer's face. Nonetheless, she did glean some information and learn of the second modules. Vice and the Navigator came to Lumopolis. They were caught by Kalin at the checkpoint for looking totally sus. Being Vice's classmate, the captain of the Guardians let them in. Just then, an attack took place in Lower Lumopolis. While the Lumo guards rushed into battle, Kalin and the party went the other way because plot, okay? They discovered true Eclipsite bosses, Shells and Shires. The two sisters fought the whole team all the way to Uptown. There, they were cornered. In desperation, they begged some unknown entities for more powers and was merged into an abomination named Boredom against their wills. Still, Boredom did not stand a chance against Blood Armors and was soon put out of its miseries. In the end, Shells and Size was only a diversion. A collaborator named Gertrude took advantage of the chaos and stole the think tank modules from under Raphael's nose. Vice and the Navigator left Lumopolis for Ganon City. The Legion commanders held a meeting there to discuss Schumer. The commanders decided to take no actions because Schumer did not seem all that dangerous. Felicize came to say the plot with intel of the autonomous Crow unit. Kalin got Daddy's permission to join Vice in the Navigator crowing party. Cronru was in charge of Nameless 13 excavations. She believes this colossus contained the Crow unit. The Navigator linked his mind to the colossus and extracted the unit. A symphony of the dead Caelestites played for him. But it was not the time for music because Schumer had arrived. Her powers was overwhelming. Cronru pulled approached, gave her moves and stole the boss for the party to escape. Schumer took her hostage and demanded autonomous Crow unit in exchange. The Navigator devised a plan to launch a surprise attack. The plan succeeded, but the attack failed. So he tried harder and punched Schumer with his puny fist. Of course that failed too. Last option, he gave up the modules and performed Dogeza no Jutsu. Amazingly, Schumer kept her words and let them off the hook. Only one module left before bad ending and the good guy had no idea where to find the third module. Fear not, the Navigator had slipped enough of Schumer's mail that he could stalk her with psychic powers. The Whispering Corridor in Umbraton would be the next battleground. Vice sent a message requesting help from the Shadow Lord and shared some news from Illumina. The Legion commanders had another meeting after Cronru reported back to Illumina. As Schumer had attacked one of their own, the Illumina Federation were taking it more seriously. Still not serious enough to send reinforcements, that is. They had another job, namely Lumopolis was also asking for reinforcement to defend everything below Uptown. Speaking of Lumopolis, the City Lord rejected Kalin's request to mobilize the 4 angels. The Shadow Lord did send help though. He sent Zeon to guide the party through the Whispering Corridor. Gertrude stood in their path. Let's sidetrack a bit to explain why Gertrude was so mad that Sales died. So you see, when he was a young squire, he says a noble lady who became his wife. His married life wasn't as rosy at the Cinderella beginning. Then he met Sales and felt true love for the first time. Except that's called cheating. So Sales got expelled from Lumopolis for trying to seduce a noble's husband. When he learned that it was the Eclipsites who had treated Sales cruelly, he switched sides and led the party to Schumer. Schumer had obtained the fire-breathing modules when they reached her. She attacked and Gertrude took the hit for Kalin. Schumer was ordered by a mysterious figure to escape when the Illumina sent reinforcements. She left behind a resurrected Nozak to stone for time. The party easily beat it. There was no Illumina reinforcement though. The train that arrived was the rules by our one and only Charon. He kicked up a lot of dust to make it seem like he came with a legion. There was no time for catching up. Schumer has armed her Black Colossus and was about to attack Lumopolis. A powerful shield protects Uptown from Schumer's attack. because Schumer rushed into battle before the Lepidoz could fully charge up. She failed to penetrate the city's defense, but the shield cannot hold forever. The Eclipsites launched a crowd invasion from lower Lumopolis. The barrier prevents Soroz from landing. For the time being, Soroz stayed hidden outside while the party entered lower Lumos on foot. All guardians, including Caelestite, was ordered to return to Uptown, leaving lower Lumo to an Illumina squadron led by Sharona and Vivian. Caelestite refused to return and joined the defense of lower Lumopolis. Marathon, the Earthworm, was knocking on the doors of Uptown. The whole party ganged up on the poor thing. Then Soroz informed the Navigator that it was under attack. Vivian requested an airship from Lumopolis and Caelestite went to borrow one. I don't know how the whole of Justice would feel about her action, but I do know how her dad felt. He did it like the Mafia would do, tell Raphael to follow Caelestite without telling Raphael to follow Caelestite. They tried to communicate with Soroz, but all they got was a repeating message telling them not to come. Schumer has crushed Soroz' echo template, which contains Soroz' consciousness. Then she suggests the Navigator to join her, becoming an Eclipsite boss. The Navigator was clearly not interested in Yandere. Oh no. The mysterious figure behind Schumer turned out to be Vivian's former partners in Illumina. She called herself Forsakin nowadays, and we would get to see her more later. But for now, the spotlight was on Schumer, who had finished charging up the Lepidoz and was about to launch a renewed attack on Lumopolis. The menacing Lepidoz loomed large over the smaller Soroz. Vivian ordered everyone to escape while she forced Schumer to cover their retreat. The Navigator pushed Vi and Caelestite out of harm's way before he got isekai. Vice and Caelestite were falling to their doom when Raphael arrived with an airship. Caelestite decided to retreat and use Damocles, Lumopolis' Death Star cannon of utter destruction. But Vice insists that they seize the Navigators first. They agree to disagree and split up. Vivian's pet dragon Curies were able to smuggle Vice into Soroz. Vice went Yandere mode on an Eclipsite and learned of the Navigator's whereabouts. The Navigator meanwhile woke up in another world. Just kidding, he was inside the Lepidoz. After they regrouped, Vice and the Navigator began searching for Vivian while hiding from Schumer. They start noticing unusual changes to the Navigator's body. He was turning into an Eclipsite. Sophon confirmed this before Vice kicked his ass. The Navigator used plot armor to receive Eclipsite transformations. There was a seed planted on the Navigator's back. Fowls appeared to extract the seed. Actually, he let Vi extract the Navigator's seed. That white stuff she got from the Navigators was the seed. It could turn people into Eclipsites, and Fowls collect these things. He took the seed and left them with Vivian. Meanwhile, in response to Caelestite's request to use Damocles, a three-party votes were conducted. Otto Choice, representing the Elder Council, votes against the ideas. Using Damocles would drain energy from the shield, and that was a risk he would not take. Iridon, representing the Horn of Justice, abstained. Schwab, representing the ruling family, vetoed the plan, but he did his mafia thing and tell Caelestite to hijack the Damocles without telling Caelestite to hijack the Damocles. Caelestite and Raphael went to Damocles' control room. Michael joined them outside. Iridon had anticipated this development, but argued that Caelestite had yet to break any laws up until the time she activates the Damocles. The Damocles began charging. The shield was down. The propulsion system keeping the city afloat was down. Gabrielle opened her eye and it was anarchy all over. At the same time, the Navigator's party tried to attack Schumer while she was busy bombing Lumopolis, but she had a bodyguard, and it was a high-level Eclipsite named Deathless. The so-called Deathless just crashed into the Navigator plot armor and died. The moment of truth came. The Damocles had finished charging up. The Lumina cannon lit up the night sky with a beam of energy too strong for Caelestite to guide alone. So Papa SWAT came out to help. Lepidoz tried to evade, but it was locked in place as the Navigator wrestled Schumer for control of the colossus. The Damocles successfully shot the Lepidoz down, bringing an end to the crisis. Khalil faced the consequences of her actions. Good intention or not, laws were broken, people were killed, a verdict was passed. She was removed from her position for 1 year. In this 1 year, she must investigate the details behind Schumer's attack. Failure to do so will result in her banishment from Lumopolis. I guess you had to join the True Orders. Raphael arranged a specialist to come over and fix Soroz. It was ground rule, the specialist was ground rule. She could fix all the hardware damage, but she could not fix Soroz's consciousness. Soroz's consciousness was safely back up in the core, but no one knew where to get a new echo template. There was a glimmer of hope though. It turned out after being shot down, the Abydos crashed in Erebos. Aboard the Abydos were the 3 modules, one of which, the think tank module, could contain information how to fix Soroz. And so the party set off on the continuation of the main quest in Erebos. They stumbled upon Sinsa from Red Diesel range, who also came to loot the Abydos. They came across a Lumopolis patch. The navigator scanned the patch with his psychic power and learned how Forsakin had been turning Lumopolis captive into Eclipsites. He suspects that Forsakin was also responsible for experimenting on Sinsa's sister, Eve. Enraged, Sinsa vowed to beat the truth out of Forsakin. They reached Abydos and faced Forsakin in battles, but she was much stronger than all of them. She was not the one to finish them off though. She had decided that would be Schumer's job. Schumer was heavily injured in the last battle. She was recovering in a healing pod aboard the Abydos. She dreamed of 17 years ago when she was still a Caelestite. Her greatest wish at the time was to be selected as the master of the Abydos. However, she failed the test to link up with a colossus. One day, she followed some kid outside Erebos and got caught by an Eclipsite boss named Fixeron. Fixeron offered her the seed. He promised her power, eternal life, and more importantly, the Abydos. She accepted the offer and led the Eclipsites into Erebos. The Abydos was dead, and it was filled to the brim with Eclipsites. The Eclipsites were running away from something. The navigator scanned ahead and learned what that something was. He saw Schumer eating Eclipsite to recover her powers. Forsakin could not wait for Schumer to recover by herself. She decided to give Schumer one extra push. She reveals how the healing pod were connected to the Abydos, and through it, Schumer has killed her colossus. The loss of the Abydos drove Schumer crazy. In her madness, she drew out tremendous power from the ship and began attacking the navigators. Sinsa gave Schumer a good bonk in the head. Forsakin stabbed Schumer in the back. On this time, Forsakin was only using Schumer. Now that the ship had matured, it must be habit. Schumer lost all her powers and got swamped by the Eclipsites. The party got saved by the Red Diesel range. The navigator retrieved the 3 modules and let the Red Diesel range have the rest of the Abydos. He successfully connected the think tank modules and found a way to fix Soroz. Soroz, being dead on the inside, could not perform cell repair and was falling apart. The think tank module gave the protagonist a fetch quest in Undercity 80. Undercity 80 was located in Dark Zone on the border of Eternal Night. Undercity 80 has been abandoned since the Dark Zone was over 20 years ago. It was super dangerous and they need intel. Felicite gave Vice the hitchhiker guide to Undercity 80. Vice and the navigator ventured beyond the safe line into Undercity 80. The Illuminati Federation was aware of the trespassing but refrained from stopping them. At the core of the Undercity, the party managed to retrieve the component needed to repair Soroz. They also woke up a powerful Eclipsite. Vice was no match for this Eclipsite, and the navigator had no choice but to activate plot armor. Grand Marshal Reinhardt came to his rescue, it was revealed that this Eclipsite was one Reinhardt's comrade, Helios. During the Dark Zone Wars, Reinhardt, Helios, and the Nears, who went by Forsakin nowadays, were sent to Undercity 80s as a test by the Committees. The Committees was Illumina's highest political bodies. They was the new bad guys. Reinhardt and her teams were given faulty intel and became trapped in Undercity 80s. Reinhardt broke through the encirclements, but her request for rescue was rejected. She took the blame upon herself to preserve Illumina dignities. She passed the test and ascended to Grand Marshal rank. Helios was thought to be dead in this incident. He wasn't dead. He only turned into an Eclipsite. Having failed to save him once, Reinhardt insisted on getting him back to Illumina. Forsakin brought an army of Eclipsites to spoil that plan. In the end, Reinhardt had to kill Helios. The whole party then escaped. Reinhardt was fatally injured. She would be dead if not for the Navigator's plot armor. The component they brought back from Undercity 80s allowed Soroz' life support system to be upgraded. Reinhardt was safe, but Soroz' repair still required more spare parts. The think tank module provides Kalin and the Navigator to a place called Colossus maintenance base. Soroz was ambushed by Fixeron troops. They broke the control panel and crushed Soroz at the foot of Aravel's most famous landmark, the White Tower. This was the destination. They turned the place upside down with metal detectors and explosives. The Eclipsite found the party just as the party blew an entrance into the base. The Navigator activated plot armor and summoned Barton to smite some Eclipsites. They enter a vast base beneath Aravel's. An AI called Neuro-Ops guides the party through the infodom. The Colossus maintenance base was only the top floor of an undercity known as the City of the Obelisk. Obelisk here refers to the Obelisk of Return, and the White Towers was only the tip of it. The second level was the residential area. The third level was exile zone. A large number of Eclipsites attacked them. The Navigator stumbled upon a laser gun and went trigger happy with it. The laser gun did not work on an Eclipsite boss, but there was a bigger sentry turret ahead, and sure as hell that one worked. It worked so well that it obliterates all the Eclipsites and wait, Vice? Oh no! Just kidding, she was only in hibernation. The whole Caelestite being peace-loving was getting quite sus. In the central core, there was a library only the Caelestite could use called the circular system. Diving into the circular system, the Navigator learned of his ancestors' dark history. The Caelestites used to be warmongers who enslaved the Eclipsites and waged wars against other races. Their weapons were designed to attack all non-Caelestite, Aurorians included. Through the work of a revolutionist named Francis, the Caelestite race reformed and became pacifist. The Navigator discovered data logs of an unknown experiment that could wake Aurorians up from hibernation. The details of the experiments were restricted. He must go deeper into the facilities. He found a console and tried logging in. The login attempt fails. The system sent Claudia. Claudia crashed into his plot armor and died. The system rebooted and granted him admin power. The White Tower rose to its original positions in Lumopolis. The Damocles activated itself in Ganon City. Sirens flared from inside the walls. In the Red Diesel Desert, Lepidoz began charging towards Aravel, and in Northland, the beacon began shining like the sun. The Navigator saw it all through the obelisk eye in the sky. The Eclipsite began pouring into the tower. War was inevitable. With admin access, the Navigator learned about a device called Throttling that could save Vice. The device was designed to modify Aurorians and make them better fighters under a Caelestite command. The bonus effect was the removal of hibernation status. Forsakin was also after the device. She tells the navigator to choke zone and attack him while she was cracking the door. The navigator used plot armor and called Barton. They got into choke zone in one piece, but Barton was severely injured. He took the chain and used chokeling on himself. The upgrade was successful and Barton Hunter came out to whoop Forsakin up. Now that they knew the device was safe, they left Vice in it and head into battle. A full-blown Dark Over crisis was taking place outside. The Eclipsites brought a new trump card, Dark Flow cannons. Reinhardt Princess carried the navigator and wrecked the cannon with his plot armor. Forsakin appeared to settle the score with Reinhardt. It wasn't a fair fight since Reinhardt was still injured from her trip to the Dark Zone, so the navigator rushed back into the tower to face more plot armor. He forced into the circular system's core ring, which was restricted even for the manager. He disobeyed the taboo implanted in his DNA and dived into the core ring. Guarding the mental space inside the core ring were Claudia and Asher. This was the ultimate defense. Caelestite could not battle the Guardians, and Aurorians could not enter the mental space. So the navigator used plot armor and summoned Vice into the mental space to beat up the Guardians. Finally, he could activate Chalk of the Law, aka Ancient Caelestite nuclear weapon of mental destruction. The mysterious Master Francis had everything set up for him. The Chalk of the Law made it a taboo for the Eclipsites to approach Obelisk of Return. After that, the whole place powered down. The ultimate weapons was only good for single use. The Eclipsite retreat, the war was over. Obelisk wanted to destroy the White Tower. Illumina wanted to study the White Tower. Red Dizoran wanted to loot the White Towers. You know, the usual stuff. Northlands proposed that the navigator should have the White Tower. They could not go against the protagonist and accept this proposal. Soroz' consciousness remained broken, but alas, the Caelestite had reclaimed his homeland.